My mill cut my entire family from our wedding guest list and mocked my disabled cousin. I exposed her, and now she's paying the price. Hey there. So, I'm Dan, a 32-year-old guy married to Rosie, who's 30. We've been together for about 5 years before tying the knot. Rosie's mom, Glenn, is a single mom because Rosie's dad has been out of the picture for ages. Glenn's always seemed like the doting mom type, and for the most part, Rosie has had a pretty solid, if occasionally intense, relationship with her. I got along with Glenn just fine at first. We did the usual family dinners and holiday stuff. She could be a bit much sometimes, always needing to make everything center around her, but Rosie was good at handling her, so I chalked it up to just a little personality quirk. A year before the wedding, we started planning for a cozy celebration with close friends and family. We were footing most of the bill with a little help from my parents. Glenn offered to chip in too, so we accepted. But things started getting shaky when we tackled the guest list. Rosie and I aimed for about 150 people. My list was around 70, and Rosie's was about 60, including Glenn and some close family. This left us a nice little cushion. When we showed Glenn the list, she mentioned wanting to invite quite a few of her own friends and family. We expected just a handful, but her list came back with 40 names. Many of these people Rosie barely knew or hadn't seen in ages, and some were Glenn's friends who had zero connection to us as a couple. We told Glenn we couldn't squeeze that many in without cutting some of our own friends or family. She got pretty upset, arguing that as the bride's mom and a financial contributor, she deserved a big say. She insisted it was crucial for her to have her people there for her daughter's big day. We tried to find some middle ground and finally whittled her list down to 15 people who had at least some connection to Rosie. This pushed our guest count to about 145, which was close to capacity but doable. Glenn accepted this, though she made a few snide comments about us being too strict compared to other couples. We used an online spreadsheet to keep track of RSVPs and seating, and Glenn could view it to see who was confirmed. My cousin Rick, who uses a wheelchair, was a definite on my list, having RSVP'd early. Fast forward to the wedding day, the ceremony was beautiful, and Rosie looked stunning. Everything seemed perfect until we got to the reception. My buddy Tom pulled me aside, looking really uncomfortable, and told me some of my guests who RSVP'd weren't on the list at the door and were being turned away. Confused, I went to check it out. Sure enough, a few of my aunts and uncles were standing outside, looking lost. They were told the venue was full, even though we had planned for 150. The venue manager showed me the guest list they had, sent from Glenn's email just 3 days prior, supposedly as a last-minute update to help Rosie. It swapped out about 30 of my guests for people I didn't even know, Glenn's friends and distant relatives we'd explicitly said couldn't come. My cousin Rick was still on there, thankfully, but not many others. Turns out, Glenn had told the venue there was a strict fire code limit and that due to unexpected last-minute acceptances on Rosie's side, they needed to cut down, and she had helpfully provided an updated list. When I told Rosie what was happening, she was mortified and looked like she was about to be sick. She went straight to Glenn, who was already inside, chilling with her newly invited crowd. Of course, Glenn played dumb at first, denying everything and acting like she had no clue what Rosie was talking about. So, here's what happened. Rosie was already on edge when Glenn, her mom, decided to mix things up out of nowhere. Rosie saw this email on the manager's phone, and when she confronted Glenn, things got wild. Glenn, in her usual dramatic style, started broadcasting to everyone within earshot that the venue had suddenly announced they couldn't fit everyone in. She said she heroically made sure Rosie's closest family got in and acted like she was making some big sacrifices, or so she claimed. She said she tried to call me to explain, but surprise, surprise, there were no missed calls on my phone. Rosie was livid, tears streaming down her face, telling Glenn she had zero right to mess with things like that. It turned into a heated, hushed argument. Rosie then tried to convince the venue to let in the guests who had been turned away, but most of them had already left, upset and embarrassed. Eventually, we managed to get a few hanging around back inside, but the whole mood was wrecked. My family, who caught wind of the drama, were devastated, though they tried to keep it cool for our sake. The reception carried on, but it felt fake, like going through the motions. Then came the toasts. My best man was sweet, and my dad spoke beautifully. But when Glenn got up, you could tell she'd had a bit too much wine. She took the mic and turned what was supposed to be a toast into a roast. She started with passive-aggressive digs, clearly aimed at me and my family, about not understanding a mother's sacrifices. Then, she just went for it with the insults. She ragged on my parents' long marriage, calling it dull, mocked my job, and then went after my cousin Rick, making a nasty joke about him needing a big entrance at the venue. She even tried to imitate him struggling, which was just cruel, especially coming from the bride's mom. Rick, who's usually confident, was crushed. His folks were furious with me for letting it all happen. Everyone just sat there in shock while a few of Glenn's friends giggled nervously. Rosie looked at her mom, absolutely crushed and in tears. Enough was enough, so I got up, took the mic from Glenn, and just said, "Thanks, Glenn, but that's enough." I had the DJ spin some music to cut the tension. Glenn seemed shocked before shooting me a glare. The rest of the reception was a bit of a mess, filled with awkward apologies and trying to keep things together. Most people at the party were either confused by the strange faces or upset about the mess at the door. Rick and his parents bailed shortly after Glenn's speech. Rosie was heartbroken, spent a lot of the night hiding in the bridal suite, and I was mostly stuck in damage control mode, filled with frustration and anger. The next day, Rosie and I sat down to talk. There wasn't much to say, really. We were both on the same page. Glenn had ruined our wedding on purpose, embarrassed my family, and showed an ugly side that was hard to ignore. Rosie didn't even recognize her mom anymore and thought maybe she'd been blind to it before. We decided to cut Glenn out completely, blocked her on everything. Of course, Glenn didn't take it quietly. She started calling up Rosie's friends and extended family, playing the victim card, saying we'd overreacted to a few harmless jokes and a small guest list mix-up. She even suggested I was brainwashing Rosie. For weeks, she bombarded us indirectly with messages through others, what they call flying monkeys. She sent sob-filled emails that went straight to spam, left long voicemails on Rosie's old numbers, and even tried to show up at our place, but the concierge turned her away just like we asked. We stuck to the no-contact policy, which was tough on Rosie, but she was firm. The betrayal cut deep. Then, about 2 months later, Glenn cranked it up a notch on social media. She started posting all these vague pity party statuses about being abandoned by her only kid and how some families don't appreciate a mom's love. Then she got more direct, throwing shade at me, suggesting I was controlling Rosie and cutting her off from her family. She went on telling her side of the story to anyone who'd listen, making it sound like she'd just made a tiny mistake with the guest list out of stress and that her speech was just a misunderstood joke. She twisted everything, making us out to be the bad guys. The final straw was when a distant aunt of Rosie's called her up. So, here's the scoop. Glenn was telling people that we booted some of her friends from the wedding at the last second and that I went off on her at the reception, making her all panicky during her speech. But that's totally not how it went down. I've got proof. A buddy of mine, knowing Glenn can get pretty wild when she's had a few drinks, recorded the speeches on his phone without anyone noticing. He sent it to me the day after the wedding as a "can you believe this happened?" kind of thing. In the video, you can clearly see Glenn super drunk, trash-talking my family, making some nasty comments about my cousin Rick, and then laughing as if it was the funniest thing ever, completely ignoring Rick's crushed expression. And then there's me, calmly taking the mic away from her. When I heard about Glenn's latest tall tales to Rosie's aunt, I was furious. Rosie was beside herself with anger since her mom was spreading these ridiculous stories. So, I took action. I shared the video of Glenn's toast on my private social media, only visible to our close friends and family. I didn't say much in the post, just mentioned, since there's a lot of confusion about what went down at our wedding, here's a clip of Glenn during her speech. This was after she sneakily changed up our guest list to cut out half my family and friends. The response was quick and intense. Loads of family members, especially on Rosie's side, who'd only heard Glenn's side before, were shocked. They finally saw the truth. Glenn's pity party backfired big time. She tried to play it off like the video was edited or taken out of context, but it was clearly unedited footage. Now, she's pretty much banned from all future family gatherings as everyone agrees her behavior was appalling. Relatives from Rosie's side have expressed how disgusted they are. Rosie hasn't said a word to her mom since the wedding day. And since the video went up, Glenn stopped her public drama, probably too embarrassed now that she's got no one left to back her up. Now, here's why I'm sharing this story. I've been feeling a bit guilty about posting that video. But after my original post, I got loads of support and different viewpoints that made me think. Even with all the feedback, my view hasn't really changed. Some folks asked for more details, so here we go. About my cousin Rick, he's 28 and ended up in a wheelchair from an accident when he was 19. He's a tough cookie and super nice, but he's dealt with a lot of jerks before. He's basically a brother to me, and our whole family is really protective of him. Glenn picking on him like that blew my mind. After everyone left the reception, my uncle, Rick's dad, called the next day, absolutely fuming about Glenn. He told me to not let it ruin our special day more than it already did. Rick was quiet for a bit, but later on, He told his parents not to dwell on it. He's faced bullies before. When I finally told him about the video, he just said, "Good." Some people only learn when there are consequences. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more crazy real-life stories happening around you. About the guest list, it was originally a shared Google Sheet that Rosie and I managed. We listed our guests and then agreed to some for Glenn after her initial huge request was whittled down to 15 guests. She could only view the list so she'd know who was fed, while we handled everything with the venue. She was never supposed to interact directly with the venue. She just made up the story about contacting the venue for last-minute changes. She completely sidestepped us. The email with the altered guest list went straight from her personal email to the venue's coordinator, who didn't think to double-check, or maybe Glenn was just really good at playing the part of a helpful person. Rosie had no clue her mom was going to pull this stunt. She was just as shocked and heartbroken as I was. Glenn had been a bit of a pain about her guest requests at first, but Rosie believed they had reached a solid agreement. For her mom to go behind our backs and mess with the guest list, especially by cutting out my family, was unbelievable to her. She trusted her mom, and that trust was shattered. And about that last-minute venue excuse, that was all Glenn's lie. The venue's contract clearly allowed for 150 people, there was no sudden cut. When Rosie confronted Glenn at the reception, after Glenn's initial denial, she loudly claimed the venue manager had told her about a reduced capacity of 120 due to some sudden fire safety rules. She said she had to make quick changes to save the day. We wanted to make sure the VIPs could make it, so I chatted with the venue manager again to get the scoop. Turns out, Glenn had told her we needed to cut down the guest list to 120 because of some supposed issues from our side. She handed over a new list that was supposed to be the final one. Glenn was basically pulling a fast one, playing both sides to get things sorted on the fly. When Rosie found out, she was in tears and absolutely livid. She marched over to the venue manager with me, demanding they stick to our original list. The manager was super sorry, but she'd already prepped everything based on Glenn's updated list. Some of my guests were already turned away and left. Rosie jumped on the phone, desperately calling my relatives who were turned away, apologizing a ton, and begging them to come back if they were nearby. A few did, but the damage was already done. Others were just too upset, and I couldn't blame them. At the reception, Rosie confronted Glenn and told her straight up that what she did was just unforgivable. Glenn took to Facebook and the phone lines to guilt-trip everyone. Her posts were all cryptic, like a mom gives everything for her kid only to be pushed aside when someone new shows up, or it's just so sad when families tear apart over misunderstandings and ungratefulness. With family, she was more blunt, painting herself as a caring mom who was misunderstood. She spun tales about me controlling Rosie and embarrassing her friends. She said her speech was all in good fun, but my family was too touchy. She even lied to one of Rosie's aunts, claiming I yelled at her during the reception, which was far from the truth. I shared a 45-second clip from her speech about Rick and my family on my Facebook, limited to friends and family. This included a bunch of my relatives and lots of Rosie's family members. It wasn't a public post but rather aimed at clearing the air for those affected by Glenn's lies. Your comments validated what I felt. Glenn's actions were a big betrayal, meant to cause havoc. I chose to share the video because Glenn's lies were really hurting Rosie and confusing family members who missed the wedding. Rosie was close to making a public statement herself, but she was so upset, and I didn't want her to bear that weight. Glenn was counting on people only hearing her side of the story, thinking it's just family stuff and we should forgive. My logic was simple. Glenn made a scene at our wedding, shaming my family, then spread lies to make herself the victim. Sharing the video was my way of using her words and actions to show the truth, not out of revenge but to stop her harm and protect Rosie from more gaslighting. We'd already decided to cut off contact with Glenn before I posted here. After the video got around, Glenn tried reaching out to Rosie with a new email, full of accusations and self-pity, demanding we apologize for shaming her. Rosie read it, showed me, and then deleted it without a response. We blocked any new numbers or profiles she might create. My parents even sent Glenn a brief, firm letter saying her behavior was terrible, she's not welcome at their home or events, and she should stop all attempts to contact us. This was their call, and we backed them up. Once the video went semi-public, things got intense. Some of Rosie's relatives, who initially sided with Glenn, called her to say sorry. They were shocked by how mean Glenn was in the video, especially towards Rick. The whole "it was just a misunderstanding" excuse fell apart after they saw it. Glenn's brother, Rosie's uncle, called her pretty mad. He said he had a tough talk with his sister, called her behavior shameful, and told her to seriously rethink her life. He also told Rosie that while he still cares for his sister, he and his wife are taking a big step back from her because they don't want to be connected to that kind of drama. So, here's the scoop. Glenn, who was super active online, has gone quiet since sending an angry email. We've heard through the grapevine that some family members, who are still in reluctant contact with her, say she's furious and embarrassed. She's trying to convince whoever will listen that the video wasn't real, but no one's buying it. Rosie, on the other hand, felt huge relief once the video got out and everyone saw the truth. It was stressful having her own mom paint her as the bad guy and having people believe it. Now, seeing family come around and support her has been really validating. Although she's still hurt by her mom's actions, she's more certain than ever about cutting Glenn out of her life. She says it feels like a weight was lifted, even though it's all pretty sad. Glenn's attempts to stir up drama didn't work once the truth was out. Most folks sided with what really happened. Jump ahead 2 years from the wedding and about a year and 10 months from my last update. Wow, a lot has happened. Basically, Glenn's still completely cut off from us. Rosie hasn't talked to her mom since the wedding day, and I haven't been in touch either. We've stuck strictly to the no contact rule. After the video debacle, Glenn tried to make some moves within the larger family circle, attempting to set up a family meeting to mend things, but everyone was like, nope. She also sent some sappy birthday cards to Rosie's cousins, which didn't go anywhere. Her brother, Rosie's uncle, talks to her a bit, but it's strained, and he's mainly there in case of emergencies. He and his wife have gotten closer to Rosie, which has been great for her. Rosie's first birthday after the wedding was tough since she didn't get the usual call or card from her mom. Glenn was blocked, and any mail would just be sent back. We've had a bunch of family events since then, but Glenn's been absent from all of them. People don't really talk about it much, except for a quick note of how sad it is that Glenn brought this all on herself. No one's pushing us to reconcile. That video made it clear why we shouldn't. It's hard to stick up for someone who showed their true colors so clearly. Every now and then, we hear little bits about Glenn from Rosie's uncle. She's become quite isolated. Her so-called friends from the wedding have drifted away, especially now that she's linked to a big family scandal. She's bitter, still thinks she's the victim, but doesn't really have anyone to vent to. And, to our knowledge, she hasn't tried any more public stunts against us. The video's impact kind of put an end to that. On a positive note, my cousin Rick is doing well. He appreciated the strong stance we took. Even though Glenn's words were shocking, especially coming from Rosie's mom at our wedding, Rick knows his worth. Her inability to see it isn't his problem. He's been at all our family events since and is treated with the love and respect he deserves. This whole ordeal has made us all more protective of him and aware of how casually cruel some people can be. So that's where we're at. Life's moved on, our marriage is solid, and cutting Glenn out was tough but necessary for our peace. I don't think there'll be any more updates from me. Glenn's out of our lives, and that's how it'll stay. Big thanks to everyone who supported us when this was all fresh. It was good to know we weren't overreacting.